Started from the bottom, that's the reason why they hating. And if you got a problem, we can solve, no hesitation. Solid rotation, moving like a sovereign nation. Broke, but we was patient, had faith in our elevation. Connected with the teacher, discussing the constellations. It's all confirmation, it's godly when we curating. Pimping corporations for the deal, we ain't slaving. Need a $500 million, and that's just for the savings. Hit up Elon Musk like, fuck it, let's build a spaceship. You know the shrooms for the day trip. Black shades got me feeling like they live. I didn't see.
All right. Sending love and balanced vibrations to the family. We're just waiting on that confirmation on the other side on this.
Keep it copy, simulation looking sloppy. Nothing they can do can stop me. Why you think I'm Cardi Tachi? Might just fly the body, learn the order out of body. I do this, it's not a hobby. I'm not just anybody, you can't meet me in the lobby. 7 black Suburbans like a prince from Abu Dhabi. Pull up to the function like Jimi Hendrix the party. Fee in a Ferrari that's greener than a safari. Really, we ain't sorry. Went from having roaches to marble flows by the ocean. Smoking them something potent, glowing from higher voltage. Had to cut off the voltage, now haters cannot approach us, especially when we focus. Swarming like some locusts, seen it in slow motion. Alchemy with the potion. Yeah, the magic of real devotion.
Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
All right. Okay, I'm feeling it. It's dialing in. Wholeness and Balanced Vibrations family. It's lovely to be here with you. Let me go ahead and switch it up real quick. It's got me here again. Okay, look. All right. So obviously this is broadcasting everywhere. We have Tribe here inside the Zoom. You should have got the link. I'm also broadcasting on Instagram. And we're on YouTube. And yeah, so this evening, as you can see, the title is Heavy Duty. It's demystifying the God of the Matrix, and that's what I intend to do. And I would say for sure that it is one thing to do this message, and then there's another thing to do it on New Moon. So we'll see what happens. But in the end, or in the beginning, depending on how you look at it, the intentions were for sure there. So okay, let's just do that. Let's just take moments. Let's breathe. Let's let all of this catch up. As you know, again, it's New Moon. The energy is wild. And it's just really the balance, though. The balance is always key because it doesn't really matter what's happening with the energy. It doesn't really matter what's going on. You're always in the most optimal state to not only benefit from it, but also be able to continue to send those vibrations through everything, you and yours, and everything in the proximity of the vibration of who you are. So this is going to continuously be more and more key to the future. We're going to need those stable hotspots that can go through all spaces and really bring that, hey, you know, this is the real, this is the truth, this is what it is. And it also answers any questions that you may have about what's happening around you, because of course, you know, when we don't know what is going on around us, it could put us in a state where, you know, we not only feel uncomfortable, you know, we have issues making future plans, you know, we really get unsure, and that's really no way for a family to be. So this conversation is about bringing in deep foundation. Like, I want to go heavy duty. I also want to have some fun, though, because this is one of those deep conversations. So expect some comedy, but also expect for us for sure to learn something. And, you know, just a side word for comedy, like, it is the only space where you can actually really talk out something with someone, and even, you know, as we know, as crack jokes, but they don't take offense to it. I even saw the other day, you know, 3 or 4 comedians going at it, and they were different races, and, you know, they even started, you know, talking about each other's race, and at no point was it ever confused in that conversation that someone was serious about what they were saying in a way to feel like that they wanted to hurt somebody. It was all like even a moment for us all to just take a look at ourselves and take a look at each other and see what we feel is funny about each other. So I always feel that, you know, comedy is a fantastic bridge to bring through even some of the heaviest things that we have to come to awareness of in infinity. So I always try to keep it live, as you know. Also, this conversation does have a disclaimer on it. So, you know, you see it there. It's not clickbait. You know, I always do my best to make sure I put out there, hey, disclaimer, Adepts only, because of course we don't have the opportunity to teach second grade every day. We got to keep up in the ante. We got to keep bringing it, keep applying pressure. So this means that when we step into some of the maxims of what we already know, we still have to bring that addendum. Like, look, if you just are jumping in here, you may want to gird yourself properly, especially with some of the instructions that I'm going to give you, meaning, protect your mind and your consciousness. You're not looking for something to worship here. You are it. And I always do the best that I can in all these builds to centralize everything that I'm explaining around the individual, because this is exactly what I will show you again tonight. Is it's all going on inside of us. So yeah, I also wanted to just give an honorable mention. Like, this research this evening has been brought to you by Sybil's AI. And so I'm not shilling or plugging somebody else's stuff. I'm actually letting you become aware of what we created on this side of things to really bring the balance into all that we're seeing. Like, we're just not getting enough voices on the other stuff that these large language models and systems can do, that really are an uptick to what we want to learn and what we want to explore in life. So just know that all my research today was done through Sybil AI, and it's incredible to be at this moment. But also, that didn't happen without meditations. It didn't happen without deep study. It didn't happen without application. And so just remember, all of that accompanies what I'm bringing and what I know. And we all have to give ourselves the opportunity to progress through to something. So even if some of this of what I'm talking about today makes no sense, then always remember that's what you get to learn. It's like if you walk into a classroom and you're coming in mid-season and there's some things that you don't really understand. Imagine math can completely throw you off. You're not just going to walk into a trigonometry class in the middle of the session and then, just shine in there, right? And so just be aware of that, because, I often see in the comments, somebody said, man, you said a bunch of things and you said nothing. Nah, man, I just said a lot of stuff and you didn't understand. It's one of those things where you can afford yourself to take this tutelage, just like any other class, any other course. Let's say you want to learn how to fly a kite or be a pilot of a plane or whatever, you may go take a master class to do that these days. And so this is the master class in occultism. It always will be. And it rings true like a beacon. It's been, yeah, I'm not going to say how long it's been. That's another joke. My friends was like, yo, we got this ongoing joke about how long has it really been, because we've been in this years. But the beauty is that we're seated properly for what's to come. And we consistently show by clear proofs. That just means like the proof of wisdom is still in the type of people that it produces. Like, really just analyze and use your discernment to determine if something is really dialed in for you or not. Like, everything that you will see from or hear from a person, they will tell you directly. Just give it time. And so again, you don't have to completely commit to anything, especially to me, but it is important to commit to self, because all is self. So also, we never neglect to also really celebrate, even if it's just for a moment, the opportunity to touch and connect, which is the key to unity. So even like right now, I even saw some cameras coming on. We give thanks. I do be feeling like, when the cameras are all off, I'm just back here and, everybody's like, let's see what he's got to say. But of course, as the trial opens up and they show presence, it's very powerful for me to feel imbued by that. Like, even when I'm coming into the space, as I always mention, I at least try to even take it down completely, slow down the tempo of the heart, really get into a relaxed state before I come into these builds, rather than going all day and then come into the build. It's just like, it doesn't work out as good as it can be. So when I slow things down though, and then I come out of that, it's literally like I'm coming out of like stasis and into these builds and these conversations, and I'm starting the engine from like cold even, right? And seeing you warms me up. It takes me to a level where I immediately realize what I'm here to do, why I'm capable of doing it, and how much more there is to come. And all I have to do is keep showing up, one foot in front of the other, and then also be who I am, which is just jubilant. I always got a smile on my face. This is real. So I want to celebrate, again, this connection with us coming together, not here to argue today, not here to be fighting and beefing and all types of weird stuff, but just really on point to share the power of the knowledge and the wisdom that has come through this space, come to our ancestors, and also to see if we could get the best of it, right? Like that is true technology, is to be able to know something that everybody already figured out in the most refined way. So that's what we're here to do. And a big part of that is being here in unity, because it allows us to have this balance, this true vibration that we actually come in and say, you know what? If I don't necessarily agree with everything, I do agree with that we all need to come together, because together is going to be much more simpler to deal with the situation. And so anything that pulls us apart, that's what we're looking to demystify. So that's what we're going to do today. Also, remember, there are many of these, meaning that time is not what you think. Linear, non-linear, all that kind of stuff is, really about you understanding. You don't have to necessarily be somewhere physically to be able to inherit what could be in another space. And so when you set your consciousness to something and you realize, hey, these spaces are open and they actually offer an opportunity for us to bring in something that's truly rare. This is unique. There's nothing like these. There will never be the same as this vibration that we're bringing on. Even with one additional person when one additional person comes in, what happens is everything just becomes even that much more unique. So we celebrate that uniqueness. We bring it together. Wholeness and Balance Vibrations Tribe. All right, so listen, this is what I got to do real quick. I got to grab the water because there's absolutely, it's just right there on the table. I'm going to go ahead and grab it. I would go absolutely nuclear if I didn't have it. So yeah, let's just take a moment to that. Let me play a little bit more, and let me take some breaths and get myself prepared for what's coming. Yeah. Somebody said that before. Like, yo, how do you just be walking right off the set? It's like, okay, all right, here we go. So I had to even figure out where we begin. All right, here we go. Okay, so also remember the disclaimer on the bill today is also about, there's an addendum here. It's like I say, weak minds can be manipulated. And, that's why there's a disclaimer around the bill today, because we're going to go right to the source, right? Like, there's a lot of different stories, but all these stories, they have a root in the same lesson. And so I'm just going to go to the cleanest version of the lesson and the last time that it was written about what is going on here in this place that you're calling Earth. And then we're also going to see a lot of parallels within ourselves and even where we're at now. But in this also, we cannot omit going through the principalities, okay? And the principalities are very real in the sense of however real you want them to be. But what happens is that, of course, there are many people who feel somewhat badgered on the battlefield right now. Like they feel like they need some type of power. And I can't say enough about how the power is in you, and that's how you'll connect with it. But some try to connect with the external versions of powers. They may even lack the ability to see the depth of where the exoteric knowledge becomes esoteric. And because of that, then they could start calling upon names and doing things and getting tattoos and all types of stuff in the belief that externally will save them. I will tell you. That is not but torment. Like there is no easy road. There is a perfect law here that just says, hey, however much you put in is how much you're going to really get back from it, and surplus, right? Because that's what balance is. There's an additional surplus that's added to you for operating with the energy either way, right? So whether your energy is spiraling up, there will be a surplus, or whether you're going in the opposite direction, there's going to be a surplus. And that's just how it's designed. So what I'm really looking to do is really more of develop what they call a hard body. That just means that you're durable and you can actually go through different trials, if you may, in order to reap the rewards, right? Because everything is about skills and lessons. And the most important one is for you to learn about yourself. So hold strong to your mind as we go through these mysteries. Also, you can always opt out. Like, I want to make sure that every person's aware of what you could say is I don't want to call it the trap door, but like the cargo hanger, the escape hatch. Yeah, the escape hatch. That's a good one. You can always opt out. This particular story that I'm going to explain to you is very exclusive to this planet and this projection. And because of that, you can always be like, well, I'm from another planet. And I just kind of got sucked in because that's just also how the thing is. And I was just kind of flying around. So that's not necessarily my story, but it is interesting to understand that that is the story of the beings that actually live here with me. Okay, so that gives you everything that you need, especially in this process, to even vicariously go through these deep mysteries, not necessarily even as you're there, but just as an observer, right? However, I will be buckled in completely on the tip of the spaceship, like not even inside the cockpit, like just on the tip, just getting every single bit of stardust that's flying in my mouth, because I for sure know how to handle my own vehicle. And I definitely know how to take any level of true knowledge and grasp the gems and the morsels of it. So I have created the alchemical chamber within myself, so that way I can take even rough cut lead knowledge, right? Just so dense because of the mines that it's been in, and then extract the diamond and extract the gold from it, right? So that's what you'll learn to do today, because this is the treaties that you're going to have to perform anyway in order to be able to perform the miracle. Because yes, we do love the strawberry fields and the peaches and the beautiful smelling colognes and all of that, and perfumes and the flowers. But there's also what grows all of that. There is all the stank, there's all the stench, the sulfur, and all of the fermentations and the things that really kick up a lot of nitrogen and a lot of explosive, chaotic like fumes in order for that stuff to have the power to build its structures. Okay. And so when we're looking at especially these kind of matrices, technically, you don't have any enemies except for your own mind and how you're positioning all of the potential pieces within a matrix. But it would be really good to know all of the pieces that always existed. And that's, of course, what the heavy levels of occult teaching is really about, truly, is giving you the keys, if you may, to the watchtowers. And in this way, the watchtowers are the pinions of the reality, the things that when you move that, it actually moves things in what you're calling the reality. So that's what we're going into. So how did this all begin? This particular session. I'm going to just paste here very briefly a text. And I'm going to do that in the big boy chat, which sends this thing everywhere. Let's just send it everywhere. Boom, let's see that. And then I'm going to go ahead and send it here inside of the Zoom. Oh man, they just bolded it and everything. Okay, it's bold. Okay. So here's a passage from Against the Heresies, Irenaeus, which says, Yaldabaoth himself chose a certain man named Abraham from among the nations and made a covenant with him, to the effect that if his seed continued to serve him, the archons would give them the earth for their influence and their inheritance. Afterwards, by means of Moses, Yaldabaoth brought forth Abraham's descendants from Egypt and gave them the law and made them Jews. Irenaeus Against the Heresies, Book 1, Chapter 30, Section 10. And I happened to see this script, and immediately it was like a time travel for me in everything that I've seen in the occult practices, in this case of Israel, and what is happening even in the world today. And even though I thought I was just going in for technically a surface occult explanation of what I was looking at, I ended up going so deep, I cracked through like a lot, if not all of the matrix. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. And it was also because I understand also what happened in quote unquote Egypt and what was taken from Egypt, and those objects in which were taken, what particular entity those objects belonged to, and why those objects were needed, if you may, right? So I was completely aware that the God of this world, as some call it, totem was removed from Egypt and then brought along with a group of people. And we don't actually know where those objects are today, but let's just say that they arrived somewhere else. Okay. And the reason why this started to become important is because when I went to find this text in the research that I was doing with Sybil, I come to understand that this text specifically against the heresies is not a Gnostic text in the way that it is containing Gnostic wisdom, as some of the books in the Nag Hammadi, et cetera, have been acclaimed to be doing. It's actually a book against Gnostics in the plight of the Catholic Church to grow Catholicism further a long time ago. Let's just say, I'm not sure of the time frame, but let's just say at least 400 or 500 years ago, 600 years ago, there's a big movement that wants to down all of the traditions that are really popular. And in this time, Gnosticism is extremely popular amongst being a problem. Now, because when we say popular, what we're saying is, hey, is that person telling the truth? Or is that system telling the truth? Because systems that tell the truth and people that tell the truth, they're a problem, right? For obvious reasons, right? So it's very difficult to get, up there into the lots of views and all that kind of stuff, because there's a real thing happening here in this field, this matrix, if you may. And I'm going to tell you more about it right now. So let's just say that, okay. And again, I'm still catching up to myself. So what we then have is we have this scenario where the only true surviving text that we have from this group of people that have this level of knowledge is actually someone citing what they believe in. So we have many Gnostic texts, but they don't reveal certain details because those books were really just, put away. But in this particular work, in trying to disprove them by citing them, they allow the text to survive in that way. So they made a little what we call blunder. And so what I then had AI do is begin to extract from this text all of the Gnostic beliefs, because this was the only times it was completely written out of what was going on. So that's what kicked this off, is me being aware that there is a specific entity that is still roaming in the world and has a group of people that actually follow it. And also that then stems into Sumerian texts and all that. But those are all the cover-ups in my world from what I understand about it completely. And then there was also for me the need to demystify all of that too, because I'm not always looking for like the band of orcs or the group of evil. What I'm actually looking for is not only the truth, like the true story of what happened here, but also my connection to it, because I understand that all is self. And all of this that's happening inside of our reality has for sure something to do with us. That's why you have a purpose. So I look into these kind of things when they come up, because of the level of vast knowledge that I've been able to be, just so fortunate in receiving from multiple levels, predominantly the transmission when I came through. So here's what we have. It turns out that knowing about the most powerful forces of the universe, or you can say the most powerful force, like it's just like one thing that you need to know, ties directly into how that force creates. What do you know? Notice how we're on a planet, and there was a notion that if we figured out how God created things, then we would figure out everything, right? So just remember that pattern right there, that it's truly one of those intrinsic relationships with creation. Once we understand how something creates, then we truly understand it. So if you ever wanted to say, okay, I want to comprehend the mind of the most vast, which in the case of in the Greek, in the Gnostic, bythos, then you would need to know, how does it create? So I want you to understand the core processes of creation, because some people now call that, of course, manifestation, so that you can see truly what are the powers of manifestation or creation, and how is creation truly supposed to come about. Okay. So we have first, and I have some words here for you that I'm also going to place on the screen. And the reason why I'm going to do that is just to make sure that you have like a visual reference of the word, right? So let me just go ahead and turn this on real quick, just while I say a couple of these words here. There we go. Okay, so we got our words here. And this word that we're focusing on right now is an emanation, okay? And let me just jump right back in the screen here real quick. So if someone already like, okay, so where are we getting with this? If you ever thought you understood what manifestation and creation is and the power of it, and you did not know about what I'm explaining tonight, you were never doing it. Just like an old person will tell you, if you wasn't making love like me, y'all wasn't never making love. Like basically that if you're not doing it to the way that it's supposed to be done, you've never done it. And so many here have never created, maybe including myself. You know, I don't want to exclude myself, but I also don't want to include myself in something so lofty once I understood that there were different types of creation processes, right? But it's very simple because let's use our first word here in the pleroma. Any idea that you can ever get of a heaven, okay, is this word, okay? Like it sounds like aroma, even like a place that you would be filled with all of the great things around you, okay? And so let's say that in the pleroma, where there is like an absolute perfection in this way, when things are created, the power of that creation is called an emanation. Because this creation process first aligns all of the poles. It gathers into assembly all there is and all there ever will be in perfect balance. And then it replicates that perfect balance. And that's called an emanation. So when an emanation happens, an emanation comes out perfect. So it's very important to understand this because when we start talking about entities such as Sophia, also known as Achamoth, but Sophia is an emanation. So this would allow you to be able to kind of chronologically and energetically place things in their proper order, because also, as it's known in the end of the Gnostic text, that Sophia returned to the pleroma, okay, but was originally an emanation from the pleroma. So it was a perfect creation. And the reason why that's so important to bring up right now is you'll see that even as a perfect creation, making mistakes doesn't mean you're not a perfect creation. So we're going to continue to see how we have been kind of learning the wrong way because we think that making mistakes means we're stupid. When making mistakes means that you're learning. And even the most powerful systems right now, LLMs, learn because they make mistakes. And every time they make a mistake, they fix a mistake and then they never make the mistake again. And this makes them more powerful. Like then you get all of the bogus data out. There's nothing in there that is an untruth. And now you're just sitting there with pure gold. You see what I mean? So Sophia being an emanation is key because you'll understand why what happens next happens. Also, I need to mention how emanations create. Okay? And I'm going to put Bythos up here because I want to have this almost like in an energetic order, because the Bythos, if you may, is like the ultimate maxim in this. This is like what we don't talk about. Okay? They just put a word there like, look, this is unfathomable. It's too deep. Stop. Don't try to go in here with language. Don't play around. We don't want to talk about it. Then there's a pleroma, which is like, yo, this is the designation of the top spot. Like if you're trying to get somewhere, it's at the top of this. It's all good there. Then it's, hey, then from this comes this, though. This is how in all of that lovely perfection, they've learned as creators to emanate when they create, which means everybody gets together and pairs, and then the exact duplicate is birthed of all those perfect pairs, and boom, we good. And then we have the next level where emanations, which are also called, in this case, aeons, can have a process of creation when they're perfect called syzygy. Okay? In syzygy, we'll get more into this later, but syzygy is actually the key to the matrix, because the syzygy creation, meaning the key to manifestation perfectly in the matrix, because syzygy actually is an astronomical alignment of when a series of powers, in this case, we could call them planets, are in alignment with what you are looking to create. So basically, perfect creation is achieved through everybody agreeing that, hey, this is what we want to create. And it's done. Agreement is I'm in alignment with you. So there are syzygy astronomy. There's syzygy in astronomy where 3 or more or 4 or more planets are all lined up on certain days. And in those days, based on those planets, manifestations can be birthed. But one, you could see why most manifestations in the world are just totally BOGO, and we'll learn here in a moment, is because one, most people are not even observing syzygy when they're manifesting. And two, they will be manifesting even things that are contrary from an energetic level. So even if they catch a syzygy, they may bring something in that a planet is directly out of line with and try to manifest that. And what that does manifest is something, but that something is imperfect. And so then we get to this emphymesis. Okay, this was like one of the words as far as tongue tie, right? Emphymesis. Okay, I listened to it like 5 to 10 times to make sure that I didn't just fall apart of the interview, but I'm loving to do it here, right? So there's now another level of creation below syzygy, and this is called emphymesis. And this, to make it like lightly, means idea or thought. And I right away would not confuse this for the kind of thinking that humans are doing right now, but more of like how a primordial force, what would happen if they think? Meaning that pure, unhindered, concentrated power has a thought. Okay? So now that you're familiar with this, because this would, I'm glad that I found a way to introduce this without getting it too complex. I didn't want to introduce any pictures, because the last thing you really want to do is get like a matrix image idea of what these are and try to put like human characters on them and even geometry, because you would totally miss it. This is about the highest levels of creation, and then how that then descends down all the way into emphymesis, right? Which is just ideas and thoughts. Okay. So now that you're aware of that, let me go ahead and center in. I'm going to turn the camera off for one moment. I'm going to get a little bit of water here. And I want to explain to you why everything is really inside. Even the world that you're living in, because we have confused material to mean outside. So when I'm saying, hey, we're in a material world, people think that means we're in an external world. And that is the first real slip right there. That's the first way a person is disempowered. Because we're actually in an internal world. We're in a mind. We're in an emphymesis, we'll just call it. We're gonna have to come up with a word. You're in the. Well, how can you? Let me see. Themesis. You're in the idea. Okay, I got to come up with terms because I don't want to keep tripping up on words and keep the flow going. So let's say that this idea in the thought, we'll just call it that. So if I talk about the thought from henceforth, we're talking about the emethymus. So let's walk through this because many are familiar with the Gnostic story, but they completely drove by what was actually being shown right there with clear proofs. So in the Gnostic story, Sophia, who's also known as Ahima, and the reason why these names are important, because I guess that's another thing that we need as addendum here, because some may say, Seven, why are you using Greek? And of course, there comes this whole thing about the difference between Kemetan and Greek, and the Greek stole everything from the Kemetans. And I don't doubt any of that, right? Because we're all taking from each other what we learned before. But it's very interesting that when I look at the Greek words, especially being an etymologist and a person who knows abjad and a person who also knows gematria, the Greek is way more numerically accurate than all of those other systems. And on top of that, they correspond to the frequency ranges of the specific entities and energies that you're talking about. So it seems like that the Greeks, if you may, were the last ones to preserve an accurate system of how entities match with numbers, match with frequency ranges, match with realms and dimensions and eidolons, okay, which is another Greek word. And this is called esophagy, okay? Esophagy is the word. Esophagy is like the abjad or the gematria of the Greek language. Okay, so let's go back up here and let's walk through just the process of how it's detailed of how the world comes into creation according to the Gnostics, which are really the Avestans, but that's another conversation. And it's that Sophia decides or yearns to know the Bythos. Okay, this is what how the story goes, that Sophia starts to yearn and want to know the deep or the mind of the deep. And in this process, she's having thoughts. And she's having these thoughts without the coupling of what is known as the divine spark, which means basically that she's not doing it in a syzygy way. She's not doing it in an emanation way. She's doing it in a emethys way. And in this, because it's not balanced, it creates what we would just call from here on, maybe sometimes I'll pronounce the language, but Yaldabaoth, or the child, who many also call the demiurge, right? Was a demiurgus, right? And so this part of creation is so important to understand because it's actually the process of creation that brought the world into play, because the physical world or the material world as you know it was brought forth in the mind of an entity. And I want to explain how that happened. So right away, Sophia, in trying to, which means wisdom, by the way, wisdom in trying to learn the deep, which anybody who knows about wisdom, you always trying to go deep, create something in the thought, because the thoughts are so powerful. This should introduce you to the real playing field of all of consciousness is really thought. And of course, they're telling you that all the time, like, yo, your thoughts are powerful, you can manifest and all this. But this is a whole nother level of learning this, because it shows you, well, no, this stuff doesn't just manifest Ferraris or girlfriends. This stuff manifests entire creations, sagas. But they try to give it to you in a seed-like form, whoever put all this knowledge together, because I will say for sure that you realize that the knowledge is so beyond birds and the bees and snakes in the garden and males and females and crazy gods. You learn that actually that's just the way that we can learn things. That is the type of systems that we use as human beings to learn. We use storytelling. But master storytellers know how to make sure that they don't omit any of the characters in the story, because the story is about what? The family. It's about the tribe. So let's keep going forward, because let's talk about what is Yaldabaoth's first flaw, if you may, because this Ethymus process, it produces, as we know, of imbalance. It's missing the divine spark. They call it the logos. And in that, you know, it could go real deep of what it's actually saying of when somebody creates without the logos, or they create without the word, or they create without the Taurus. You see what I mean? But in the Matrix, people do it all the time. They create things, but without the Taurus. They just use, in this case, the pentagram. And in this case, when Sophia was in this process of pondering and then created her thought and idea, it came out as what is known as the child. And the reason why that is given that term, because you're like, wait a minute, a child is innocent. You will understand in the cult what it means to be childish and why a child is exactly opposite to an adept, right? No matter how cute they are. Because right away now, what you have being born from a thought is a divided being, a half being, like almost even like a bipolar being. And in this process, the first thought is, I'm the only one. There are no others than me. There's nobody more powerful than me. And if you don't have children or you've never raised children, you may have missed it. But you'll notice how children come out thinking that they know everything and they can rule and control everybody. And even if you've ever watched a child knows how to manipulate everybody in the room, including the mother, for what it wants. In that way, the child is like boss baby. Okay, I think that's the easiest, that's a funnier way to describe the demiurge. But it's because of the traits. Now, notice how also I haven't really hit off the mark of what most immature people are like. They want to be the boss, but they don't even know why they want to be the boss. Let's just think about it again. It's like, do you remember the cult of the boss? Meaning where everybody was like, yo, I'm the boss. They even have the suit, the boss. They even had another streetwear line, boss. And everybody just wanted to be the boss. But what does it mean to be the boss? Truly, not the fake, boiled down, microcosm, human mind version of one, but the real full-blown boss. You need to have subordinates. There's absolutely no boss that doesn't have anybody underneath them. Right? In the real world, in the real matrix. So what you have to understand right away is that boss baby, the child, manifested immediately inside of the material world, which it created in these thoughts, subordinates. And these subordinates became what you would say is the archons or the lords and the rulers of this world. And so I'm going to go through this again, step by step, and itemize first the creation process of Yada Baal. Because again, to understand the mind of the creators, you need to understand how they create. And so we now understand why Yada Baal is birthing what could be seen as distorted or half human. Well, no, excuse me, not half human. Excuse me. Let me not throw anything in here. Distorted or just half incomplete beings, half incomplete thoughts. They're lacking their generative principle. They're lacking their spark. So it's literally like when I had to meditate on this deeply, the only thing that I could really come to was this explanation that was coming through that there's two things, 7, breath and the spark. And this is what creates the kind of entities that you are. Breath and spark. And there are some that are made just from the breath, and there are some that are just made from the spark. And then there's some that are made with the breath and the spark. And, you know, you can take your time in pondering what would be the differences and in another session, right? So just understanding that the demiurge is actually creating through its mind, but everything that is creating is arriving in what you call the external world, but really it's all internal. No different than you have a dream at night. Man, the dreams have been getting crunk lately. I mean, come on. Who's the director? What is going on? But just that baby version of you being able to kick off a brand new Netflix every night, imagine that in something much more primordial, much more pure in the way of that it hasn't been distorted by any other things beside I'm the boss. Because remember, it's a thought. And what I'm going to show you here is how these thoughts continue to live in the matrix, and how anybody that has a thought is tied into it, like has thoughts similar to this, get tied into it. So it's not so much as just a creature laying back there in the cave somewhere getting bowed down to by bald head robed men. It's actually something going on inside of the mind, because that's what's ultimately revealed when you study things like the worlds of the jinn and, you know, the powers of the world and the principalities, basically what we call spirituality, the study of spirits. But let's keep going forward, because now you're getting a clear idea of how these creations are coming out and also why they're a bit flawed. And then you can also see some of those same ideals present within the people that are born every single day. And even not even just the ones that are born, but the big babies, basically, that a lot of people are running around wanting to be the boss, and they want to possess or have subordinates underneath them. And you need to understand that the first time that the being that was on the highest magnitude did that, it actually created then 6 more beings. Okay, because now what needed to be set up is dominion itself, a place as a domain. Notice the words domain, dominion. So a place, a dome, if you may, you know, watch out, watch what you say, but enclosed place. In fact, the Greek, that's what I'm saying. They tell you, they call it the ark. Just like the word proarch in Greek means before all of this. So it's saying pro meaning ahead, though, not behind. So what's to come, what is greater, a proarch. So, but what does the word ark mean then? The actual thing itself. So these constructs that we're in, they are called arcs in Greek. And the arcs are created through ephemesis. Okay? And then things live inside of those thoughts. And it's in a way where you can immediately remove yourself from different thoughts and realities, just like how you do in the dream. How you could just be like, yo, how we get on the beach? Whoop, whoop, oh, whoa, how we here? Because that's how the entity that we are moves. You see what I mean? But if you don't have any control of your thoughts, then obviously you would have no control over the plane or the creation process. So thus, even being devoid of this level of awareness of not only how things are created, but also the things that were created and through what processes, if you don't know that, it also kind of forfeits you from being able to climb the ladder back up into emanation, into pleroma, into diving into Bythos, maybe even because you've learned from your mother the ultimate truth about why we emanate versus use ethymysis and just have thoughts and ideas in our true creation processes, right? So let's keep going. So then the demiurge, which I'm going to break down these powers, but then births. Now, they're said to be his sons, okay? Because they're giving you something here about like the connection. They want you to understand the connection, but they want you to understand that these are masculine ideas and concepts that are brought forth within the mind, okay? So first comes Yao, right, which is IAO. And there's enough about this deity to understand that this was the central character in the pantheon for quite a bit of time. Some connect Yao also to Yahweh, but Yao is a way more condensed version in antiquity, okay? And it also, which I'm going to give you the powers of these particular stations, but let me just give you some Greek just some quick correspondences, and that is Yao is a correspondence to the moon. And then you have Sabaoth, who is in itself the sky, because there needs to be heavy control of the sky. Because just like what you'll learn inside of the ancient text and also with just the third eye, they say if we pull back the sky, or in this case, Astaphaels, but we'll talk about that in a minute. If we pull back the shield from the sky, then it's like even what you would witness would be more than you could take. Okay. And what we're talking about is like, you see how there's like all this cloud and pollution, right? But even in the desert, like where there's no lights and you look at the sky, it's pretty intense, you know, when it's really clear, if you've ever seen that. But even that has a veil over it. And if that was pulled off, it would be like, whoa, you would feel like the UFOs, the shams, and everybody came at one time. It would be overwhelming, okay? So let's just understand also in the sky, as we talked about with the jinn, there's a whole team of entities also in that space. And because of that, they are in themselves an army. And there is one who masters over that army, and that is Sabaoth. We just call that the sky host. Okay. And then we have Adonius. Now I'm going to break this down here in a moment for those that think, okay, is he plugging the entities? I'm going to break down something so deep for you here in a moment. So hold yourself together, but just understand the process of the parts that are being covered. The moon is being covered. The sky is being covered, meaning like there's a station, there's a watcher there. The earth, or Adonius, is one of the sons, is being covered. The fire itself, which is a transformative force, is being covered, right? So the power of fire and volcano. And then Astaphaels, who in itself is occult darkness, or what's often mentioned is when you enter into the dream world, if you're lucid enough, you'll notice that most of the time there's no sun in the sky, but there's a light that still keeps everything bright enough. And even when it's nighttime, which you'll notice that it is even there as some kind of nighttime, but it doesn't stop other things from being seen. So in that way, the night cannot cloak in the dream world, as nothing can lie in that space. Okay. However, in the world, darkness can come down over the world like a veil and even stop us from being able to see things unless we shine a light into it. Now, that works on an entirely different level with how your third eye also functions, because in everything, if your third eye is on in the darkness, there's a lot for you to see. But if you're not even seeing that, you can imagine what is it that is actually cloaking what is actually here. And that is seen as a force itself. That force is really the root to occultism. It involves secrets, and it involves hiding things, because in order for this dominion to continue, because these are the forces in which the child created in its mind to have dominion. So it's saying, hey, if I wanted to control everything, I would need to also control not only the things that I showed you, but also the occult knowledge. Because with occult knowledge, a person would become aware of all of this. So now let's keep going. So let me break down very briefly these powers before we get into the final two creations of the child in this way. The child's creating now. How can it, how is this going to work out? Let me give you the breakdown so you understand the powers. As I mentioned earlier, and let's just put it back up on the screen so it's almost like a reference or a lesson that you understand clearly. Here it is. Throw myself back in here. Yao as a power. Understand this because it's a projection, it's a thought, it's an idea. Yao is often associated with the governance of the moon and its phases. Its powers include influencing the tides, the cycles, and emotions connected to the lunar changes. It has control over the water and its properties, impacting both physical bodies of water and the emotional state of beings. Weaknesses. Yao's power is intrinsically linked to the lunar cycle, making him weaker during new moons when the moon is not visible. Its influence is disrupted by the presence of strong solar energies which counteract the lunar dominion. There's something very important for you to understand about this. Let me put it up here for you to see. Because there's no room here to wander after personalities and to think about these as personalities, but to think about the depth of the knowledge. The depth of the knowledge is showing that when you create through the ethnomesis process, there's always a weakness. This is what can be missed. Because you may say, well, why do the angels, or why do the entities, or why does the world, or why does it do? And then you start itemizing the bad thing. And it's because how it was created. And because of the way that it was created, it always is vulnerable in a certain way. And this is what eventually leads to wars. Because when certain beings started figuring out the weaknesses of other beings, and then more of the ideas and thoughts were coming forward, it was then like attacking time in certain tenses, like when nations started warring against each other, because you're actually looking at nations. There are moon people. They're all volcano people. But before we get to that, let's keep going. Yao's power is intrinsically linked to this lunar cycle. So this means on the full moon, this power is laying in a coffin. I mean, in the new moon, it's laying in a coffin somewhere, hiding from everybody. But by full moon, it's full-blown emotional power, right? And all of what comes with that, controlling also patterns, because these cycles are also patterns. And this is talked about later in the occult text, but we'll keep going. We have Sabaoth, who is traditionally associated with the power of the sky and the celestial bodies. In this case, the celestial bodies are those who live in the air. He has control over the weather patterns, the storms, and celestial phenomena. He's known for his ability to influence celestial bodies and has a significant role in astrological interpretations. Weaknesses. Sabaoth's power is diminished during periods of solar eclipses and other celestial events that obscure the sky. So when there's a big storm or the sky is dark, the power goes away. He's vulnerable to disruptions in the atmospheric balance, such as those caused by human activity or natural disasters. Territory, high altitudes, mountain ranges, open skies. He's venerated in cultures that have strong connection to sky gods, celestial worships, The regions prone to difficult weather phenomena such as frequent storms or clear skies fall under his dominion. By the way, Sabaoth was one of the only sons, if you may, or ideas or thoughts that were known to also rise back into the pleroma because of its experience with the sky. So this is like a code that anyone who understands this type of knowledge like of celestial bodies starts realizing very fast the child's position. It's like, yo, the child is over there working the dominion. There's principalities in the sky, high altitudes. And then we have Adonias, which again is like maybe one of the premium gods really today, even of Israel, because it has everything to do with the land. This is the power of the earth, the fertility, the agricultural cycles, plant growth and fertility of the land. This was your Pan. This is your, when they say the Lord and the lady in Wiccan, this is the Lord that they're talking about. This is the fat thigh god. This is the big stomach god, whether it's Bes or whether it's Akhenaten, because it's a fertility god. And I'm going to explain when I conclude here why this power is present within these beings and why that is the big reason why people confused where we were, because nature is also here. But let me keep going. He has control over the seasons, their transitions, influencing crop yields and natural occurrences. This power wanes during periods of drought and environmental degradation. One of the underlining things that you're going to see, because again, this is the construct in which was built. These are the thought forms that were used. This is also what came before Adam, or the giant man, was created. So you can even derive that these are the powers that were also commingled or used to create the first Adam and then Eve. So again, this gives you an awareness of what are the powers that are still inside of this creation that we are. And you also see that when nature is weakened. So basically, weaknesses come when we're moved out of ideal conditions. But in this case, let's say Adonias is weakened in deserts, right? Or places where there's environmental degradation. So cities. So this kind of abundance can't even move into this area. So it's susceptible to disruptions caused by unnatural alterations in the land. So if somebody moves the ley lines and throws a church on top of something, such as the industrial pollution and deforestation, kills the nature and the things around it, then this entity, this energy, this idea, this thought, it can't move. Right? So its territorial designations are fertile plains, farmlands, and regions where rich soil conducive to agriculture. Right? And then this is also the earth deities and the fertility gods. Right? And then we have Elois, who is in this way the mind and the intellect. This is the knowledge and the wisdom and intellectual pursuits. Because remember, Sophia is her own emanation. But the child, or Yaldabaoth, creates Elois as its intelligence. His influence extends to the educational institutions, the philosophical endeavors, the scientific research. But this power is weakened by ignorance. I thought that was funny. And by the spread of misinformation. Right? Like, think about if we're living in an age and there's like a lot of misinformation, the core power is now weakened. And so what I'm trying to show you is that this is like looking at your brothers in a certain way and seeing the power of your brothers, and then also seeing where they are weak. Because also these energies, they fight with each other, because these are the archons. And as I explained before, they're also the organs. They're the organs in the body. They are also the nations of the world, respectively, because you have many nations inside of your body. Excuse me, you have many organs inside of your body. It's not even just the limited, the heart, the spleen, the kidney. Like, look at the body. It has many different, what you would say is like siddhas or cities or powers or power points. And this gives you an idea of what those energies actually do, because they're projecting into the matrix and they're making everything static. So this is why, like, if you slip and bump your head, or you have a stroke and it messes with your brain, you will feel yourself inside of your mind slow, and you will see the reality like warped. You will see like stuff in the reality that's, so basically what I'm saying is if somebody hits you in the head and a hammer and damages your brain, it will damage your perspective of the reality. This will let you understand that these organs are connecting you into reality. It doesn't mean it's the only reality that exists, but you need to acknowledge that organs connect you into realities and make you aware of things and feel things that you otherwise wouldn't be aware of or be able to feel. So that's what I'm saying about these energies is they entwine, but not in a way like a creature is in the sky with cables connected to you. We're inside of the thoughts and inside of the mind and inside of fields. So we can easily choose to remove ourselves from anything by simply vibrating what we would want to be consistently. But I'm going to get into that here in a moment. So going forward, just to finalize here, we also have, okay, hold on. Aloysius wants his territory, his territories, academic centers, universities, regions where the intellectual culture and achievements have happened, rich histories of scholarship, places where education is highly valued. They all fall under this domain. Then we have Aureus. This is the power of the fire, okay? Now, again, you can easily tell because some sons rebelled, while some sons align even further with the child. And you always can see kind of what forces kind of align more with the boss vibration and energy and kind of remain there in certain ways, unless it's really gone through a transmutation. But to understand Aureus, this is the fire, the power of transformation. So transformation is also when something is burned up, because it's going to be transmuted. Now it's going to have to make its transition. So this governs a literal and a metaphorical fire, including creativity, passion, and destruction. All this is coming down the same channel. And this is why when you bump into people that are extremely creative, they have a tendency to be extremely unstable too, right? Because that muse-like energy is a fire. And it's, fire, like they say about the jinn, the fire is it's not, it doesn't like to sit still, right? It doesn't just like to be enclosed. It doesn't like to be snuffed out. So that's it's also in itself not stable in that way, right? So he has control over this volcanic activity and these wildfires of transformative processes of nature, right? And then the weaknesses of Aureus and his powers diminish in the presence of water. So jumping in the ocean, he's gone. They get anything that can extinguish fire and counteract his influence. He's vulnerable in periods of inactivity or dormancy, meaning getting bored. Fire just goes out when you're bored. There's an inactivity or dormancy, such as long stretches without significant creative or transformative events. So again, do you see why I'm saying, hey, you don't have to look at this like these are people or entities. You need to look at this as this is the thought process around creation, and these are the energies, and this is how they behave. And anytime they're in environments that don't benefit them, then you see their weak side inside of you. And then what happens is, because of how the world turns, imagine with what I just named. Like, so if one of your energies doesn't like to be around ignorance, shit, sign out right now, right? Or if one of your energies is not really liking water, right? Or one of the energies is only trying to be around, I'm just giving the examples here. And, like being around nature, it needs to be around fertile things, right? For it to completely flourish and shine. And then what happens when it doesn't? Well, just like any energy, when an energy becomes stagnant, it becomes weak. And then you start seeing the worst of the energy. Okay. So let's keep going, because remember, these powers were created to rule over. These thoughts were created to rule over by the child. So understand their position. They're not the head honchos in that way. They're the subordinates. or they think or were made to think that they were the subordinates. This is why nations of people even were thinking they're the subordinates and there's only one that is over them. And this game that you're seeing being played, that's why I had to bring it back from the Gnostic text, is being played right up until this very moment in the world. This energy still lives and it's thriving. And I'm just going to show you how to completely sidestep the whole thing real easy and actually get into your awareness and power, because now you understand the different levels of creation. So we'll finish here. We have Astaphaeus, okay, or Astanaphaeus is associated with the power of darkness and the unseen. He governs secret, hidden knowledge in the subconscious mind. His influence extends to the mystical practices, shadow work, and the exploration of the unknown. Astaphaeus' weaknesses is diminished by the exposure to light and the revelation of hidden truths. It's susceptible to disruptions caused by transparency and enlightenment, which counteract his domain of secrecy and darkness. His territory is in caves, underground regions, and places shrouded in mystery. Just to let you know that there's places shrouded in mystery all up inside of the earth. He is honored in esoteric traditions and mystical practices, regions known for their secrecy, hidden histories, or mystical significance fall under his domain. And again, the reason why that becomes like the chief to be known is that's exactly the power that all these institutions that are secret societies practice with and practice under. You should not be naive to not understand that they know about this. They know about these energies, these watchmen, these forces, and how to control them. Now, here's something else that I wanted to explain to you before we get into the mechanics of how these realities work, and then get ready to go forward from this evening. Now, let's take a step back here, because what I just explained to everyone was that, especially if you're in a certain mindset, the reality that you're actually living in is in the mind of the demiurge. That is the physical reality. And some may struggle with that. And the primary reason why they'll struggle with that is because they will look at the beautiful things in the reality that are also here, such as nature. And in fact, nature really is in itself the balancing force in all of this. We know that. But one thing we may not have considered, if you have a child, does not that child have a part of you in him? So if Sophia, as we know it, which is very connected also to Gaia and nature, had a baby, don't you think that that baby would have flowers, plants, trees, or the power to emit those things? And that's what I was saying about Adonis, is that this is also a fertility god. It has the ability to bring prosperity, not only controlling the money supply, but also controlling the crops and the goods and all that kind of stuff. So it's just to make sure that you're not confusing that the reason why you believe that we're inside of the mother goddess is because there's plants here. The entity that created this world was a part of a being that already had this power to create all of the beauties that you're seeing, and that is Sophia. So it's important then to think about now what happens next, because after this these creations came forth, these emetheses from the demiurge, it's not satisfied. It's not enough dominion. This is always what happens. They depicted this inside of many of the ancient texts of a monster that has a hole in its stomach. No matter how many beings it rules, it still wants to control more and control more. So in this way, the next creation of the child was to further that endeavor, to actually get much more creative, much more diverse worshipers, servants underlings. And that was the purpose of the creation of Adam, which is called the giant man. And Adam is called the giant man. Well, it's really Adam Cadman, because the original Adam Cadman possessed what you would consider a masculine and a feminine side. So when Adam was created, in this case, this was because the child said, I want more worship. I need to feel this power of being in charge more. I'm going to create another being, and I'm going to breathe into this being some of this power that I have. And they do say, as a side note in the Gnostic text, that now the divine lesson was about to unfold, because all of this was still a lesson that Sophia was learning to see the depth of the Bifos knowledge. Like, basically, she was trying to figure out why that we were using emanation process to create rather than ethymist process to create. And she experienced that firsthand with her own child. He immediately uses the creative power to create subordinates who then worship him or fall into his mind as servants of him to do whatever he tells them to do. Then he continues further with a creation, with a being that he wants to give a little bit more emphasis to by giving even some of his own breath or power. And in that process, also, Sophia had already become aware of her errors. Even with the birth of this energy, it was like the mother was already aware, And so when Adam was created at that stage, she took the opportunity to correct a part of the creation by putting in the divine spark in Adam. This is what the Gnostic text says. So the child is in the creation process, and the mother comes in and perfects what was off with the creation. She tries to correct the creation and puts in the logos. So when Adam comes, and again, we're just giving a story here. So when Adam comes into like counsel with the child sees something on Adam immediately and becomes jealous. Now, this is the classic, and you won't really, some may not relate to this, but you got to realize it's going on. There are parents who are jealous of their children, believe it or not. They will look at their child's beauty, strength, vigor, and really be actually on some jealous, I don't like this child. They took my energy. They took my power. Okay? You may not be familiar with that, but this goes on. It goes on more often than you think, especially in distorted, sick households. Some may have been in some of these. But in this process, immediately Yaldabaoth is jealous of Adam. This is why it's known as the jealous God. He sees something on Adam Cadman and wishes he never even made Adam Cadman. That is the text in the Bible, as they're just sprinkling as many pieces that this is a really corrupted text, the Bible. But and he wished he had never made Adam. That is the demiurge saying, man, something's up with Adam. He's got a countenance and he's a shine. He's going to be a problem for me. I don't like him. And then he makes his next move. And this is what I was calling Operation Smurfette. This is what many people don't even realize ultimately happened with man, which is that he then attempts to remove the part that he doesn't like in Adam from Adam. He tries to split Adam. What is he removing from Adam that he doesn't like? His mother. See, when you really understand this story, you understand there is no father in this story. And at Enthemesis, there is no father. There's only the demiurge playing like the good God, which is more like the Catholic Church, or the bad God, which is more like the evil creature, right? So either way, you're getting extremes. There is no father in this context. There's only the mother and the child and the thoughts. So again, it's very important to center into the wisdom, because the wisdom will then show you what happens next. Because that countenance that Yaldabaoth doesn't like on Adam is the countenance of his mother, that Sophia wisdom side. And so he attempts to remove it and creates Eve. And in this process, he also conceives, and this is in the Gnostic text, that Eve is going to then serve as a distraction for Adam, because Adam is going to yearn after Eve, but never even know why. And this is, of course, because Adam was originally a part of Eve, or Eve was originally a part of Adam, or wisdom was originally a part of what the masculine is, until it was cut and removed. And then from that point, they were yearning. But also another thing happened in that process. When Eve was created, Sophia then took the opportunity again to endow Eve with something that they don't mention. I'm still digging for what is the word. But Sophia gives something to Eve, or something to woman, that forever connects her to Sophia, meaning forever connects her to wisdom. It could have been the womb. They say it's synonymous to Nakash, which is basically the illustrious serpent on the rod, like the raising Kundalini snake, right? So, and then they say the process was that Ahima, or Sophia, sent the serpent, Nakash, to Eve in the garden to give her the knowledge of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Okay. So now this is what makes a situation a crazier situation, because now you have Eve, who basically now has intuition. And then you got Adam, who, poor Adam, he can't talk about him. That's why Adam just kind of following everybody from there, because he's like, I don't know. I seem to have lost my wisdom or something, right? But you have them completely now in the opposite liking of Yaldabaoth. And this is where the plot begins for Yaldabaoth to attempt to influence, or attempted to even destroy, all of these offspring that were created from its own mind, because they don't serve. Okay. So now then the systems begin to roll out to make people serve, because now that the land is starting to become abundant, because also the Gnostic text says the other entities, Orius, Yao, Sabaoth, Adonis, etc., also coupled with Eve, knowledge, wisdom, Sophia, and began to beget their own beings. And this is Pandora's box now, because now you have beings that are only really good at one thing in that way, now birthing through the copulation process, which is like, you see how things just start getting so off balance, because now nobody doesn't even know how to create anymore, and they're creating, and this is creating more madness. And that's why the whole thing about even the beginning of the Bible is centered around the creation really of Cain, because Cain is the first in that text to be born with some kind of issues. And then now, because of Cain killing Abel, there continues now, even up until this day, these two wars between brothers, and now Israel and Palestine and all the different polarities that you can think of. But all of these come from a basis of an original story of something that is going on in our minds that had to do with the process of how we came into existence. Now we have so much. We have the divine spark. We have all of these different genome. Who even knows what all of this stuff even does? Like, we've been impressed on even by other forms. And that's another thing that is Something that the Gnostics are also clear to point out is to remember that this story is exclusive to what's going on here in this projection, in this mind, if you may. But it's not the only one that exists. So still, while you're over here experiencing this version of a lesson that had to be learned, until you actually get it, you don't really make it beyond it. And here's why. So now that you've been introduced to the cast of the characters, which you can just see as family or even extended family if you wanted to distance yourself further, you can then understand why the reality, and I'm just going to go over this real quick, would really be a reality of envelopments. Okay? And the easier way to see this, and I'll break it down further, but let's say there's something so large that it could wrap you up completely inside of it. And then from that point on, everything that you're seeing is what it wants you to see. Okay, I just want you to understand this. You can imagine this like a great angel with big giant wings and then a smaller being. And then this angel then shrouds over this smaller being. And because now that smaller being is inside of the mind of that angel, everything that angel thinks that soul or being inside sees that. Whether you know it or not, that's exactly what's happening in the dream world. You can also be in your own. You can be in your own enveloped field. You call that your aura. And then you can see things that your aura is projecting to you, or the world that your aura is phasing you into. Or another energy can come over you or shroud you, and then you could be inside of that energy's projection tank. And that's what nightmares are. So there are ways to ensure that you're capable of actually making sure you're not shrouded by these kind of energies. And while it's very simple, it does actually prove to be quite difficult. And this is because I'm going to explain it to you like this. When we think of the word possession, we often think of somebody like the movie with the chick getting possessed and she's staring at the TV and her head turning all around and all that kind of stuff. We think of it like that. Versus thinking of it as how we also use the word possession, which means that they're the things that I own or the things that belong to me. Okay? So when something thinks that that you belong to it, then in that way you become its possession. And this is the realm of these lower vibratory beings. They possess many humans. And how this works is that when a human gets engaged in any of the low vibratory stuff, which are like jealousy, greed, hatred, envy, these are so easy to count off. The moment one gets into those frequencies, you actually are now exposed to all of the entities that live in that frequency, okay? And they have like a spiritual internet, if you may, like a spiritual cloud, okay, for their bandwidth. And then when you are like, let's say you're gossiping about somebody, yo, you know, blah, 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 you know, he's just scummy, right? Like, I can't stand that cat. Now, you're in that frequency. So now all of them can hear you. And there's so many of them because they copulate all the time that the data, if you may, passes through the whole network. This is all they're trying to replicate with getting all the data with AI is the spiritual network that's already up and running. Because what's then happening, there's a lot of bargaining and everything that's going on about, like, if you said something about somebody else and it can keep up and cause some confusion and some division, and all it takes is that something weird happens, like you accidentally send the message to the wrong person, or you happen to be coming down the street right at the time that your boyfriend is with this other girl, or you happen even to get intuition that something's telling you, hey, go outside and take a look. And then now you're caught up in all the drama. I call this the busybody network. Okay. This is the realm of the witches and the warlocks, where their magic is simply taking other people's power. If they find out you got a skill or a talent, they're trying to exploit that because they don't have skills and talents. See, the thing is that when you have skills and talents, you don't need luck. Like if I have a power and an intelligence, I don't need luck. I just go and do what I do. So do you see many of these manifestation systems of power are actually designed around the spiritual network of busybodies? Because the ideas and the thoughts are just images that are in vain, that don't really syzygy. They don't even really like line up with anything that the cosmos is really trying to achieve. What is the cosmos trying to achieve? Surplus. It wants to spiral up. Just like the trees, they want to grow up. Everything wants to continue, live. Versus then the opposite realm, as it says in the code books, they are like the haters of life. These are entities that they want everything dead. So remember, our mother is here. This is why Sophia continues to go through this. This is what they were meaning by in the Gnostic text, that, you know, Sophia's essence, her emanation is still here with us. It's nature still holding it up. In a world where they got tanks, bombs, that's Yalda Bayo. You see what I mean? But it's all in its mind, and to rise above its mind. If you don't think that's true, say, hey, I created them in my own image. Let's look at the image. Because it impresses upon physicality, because physicality is only a thought. Yalda Bayo impressed upon the back of the mind, as many have already seen this. Right here in the corpus callosum, we have the horn god. And sitting with the pineal also in the middle of his head. Those are the powers. These are the rulers. This is the dominion. This is the world. I gave them my image, which is my imagination. I breathed life into them, which is my memories, my essence, all of those powers. And then the mother came in and said, well, let's add the spark. And then what came out made everything jealous. This is why it was saying that, hey, even man was created higher than the angels. And it's because the angels were created by the demiurge. But many of the angels, some of the angels went back. Some of the angels are still alive. Some of the angels are kings of the world. Some of the angels are necromongers sitting in the underworld, in the lower vibratory frequencies. And then the humans, right, with all this power sitting here with none of their knowledge. And so it's easy prey, because here's the thing. When we think about possession, possession doesn't work if you don't agree, right? So let's just say it this way. Some people already think they own you. You know, let's keep it G. Like even your girlfriend, your wife, your husband, they think they own you or something. That's not what's happening. Nobody owns you or possesses you, or you don't belong to anybody but yourself. But that's not how other people think. And let's forget about spouses and relationships. Let's go to the government. Now, did we agree at any point that they could have possession over us? Well, that's what you learn with the straw man. That's what you learn in cosmic law, as we call it. That's what you learn about the system of the legalese, the passports and the IDs, that the bank account and all this, because technically in that way, we're kind of like agreeing that they have some type of control. So this is why I was saying, like, I don't want to play around with all of this. I get what's going on. I know I need to get to higher ground. I'm on that right now. But I'm not going to also be oblivious to that. I'm not still connected into these systems because I'm doing certain things. And I'm going to work to remove myself from systems that feel like that they control me. Now, ultimately, of course, you can be there in your consciousness spiritually, like nobody controls or owns you. You better stand on that, though. Like they say, you better really stand on that business. But also in the way of our actions, though, we don't show that. This is why it's important to align our hearts with our minds, meaning that we still have to go to the bank. We still have to pay these folks taxes generally. And when I'm saying you have to, I'm saying you don't have to do anything, of course, but life starts getting really crazy. You need to really be lined up. And that's why we're creating things like we're creating, because we're finding that niche. Like, what can we do that has a moral bearing to it, not going to degrade us, not going to get us possessed, but still also allow us to thrive? How are we going to erect the shield? Because the shield is a vibe. It's an environment where beings come and they don't actually have anymore all of what's going on really in the world. Because now when I show you this, think about how many Yalda Baal type demiurge type mindsets. Look what the word means. Demiurge, lower urges. Demi means down, lower, under, lower urges. So all of the lower urges. So demiurge is not going anywhere, doesn't want to go anywhere. Every time someone arrives in the world and wants to be the boss, it has someone new to file into the ranks, just like Freemasonry, just like the military, just like the academic institution, and just like any of those other structures where a person is just moving up based on how many lies they're willing to tell. You see what I mean? Like, yeah, look at what's happening now in the conscious community. Like, I'm not even going to get into it right now, but basically, if you're speaking the truth, just keep speaking the truth. So in the end, I have this last thing, because now you can kind of realize how your power is really in your thoughts. And you can also see how careless you may have been with your power. You can also see why certain thoughts will come across your mind. You can see how the mind could be filled with thoughts, right? Like if you just, but you know now where those thoughts are coming from and how they're coming from inside. But then when you put yourself into the proper position and you begin to get on your quest, because your quest first is as a man to find your Eve, as a female to find your Adam inside. See where your power is weakened because of being an ethymicist, just a thought, an idea, versus a syzygy or an emanation. Realize that now you have power because you know the alignment days. But now you need to work on not being so selfish, not just manifesting things that have to do with your benefit. And then you'll see it not happen. As I told you before, I had already cracked into this. I just didn't know what was going on. I was like, it seems like every time I pray for something, this was a long, long time ago. Every time I pray for something that God wanted, it would happen immediately. But when I was praying for something that I wanted, there was like a delay. And I was trying to like figure out how to really hack that, if you may. And I realized maybe I should align my consciousness with the thoughts of God. That's what I came up with. That was 20 years ago, 7, before all of this. Still smart enough to know, I see an anomaly here. This was church, but more deep Gnosticism. But every time I was like, praying for something, somebody to get healed or something like that, boom, it happens. But then when I'm asking for petty stuff, like even to go home, even to, talk to something about me, nothing. Then I was like, man, there's got to be a way. And I started aligning what I was asking for what God wanted. And then it was turning on something. But I didn't know what I was really accomplishing was syzygy. And I didn't even know the days and was still getting by. Imagine when you just, like our LLMs, you just ask them, what are all the days of the syzygy? Sybil, what are all the days of the syzygies this year? And they already know what syzygies are. Or you could say the top 4 planetary alignments this year, right? So, or I can send it to you in Discord. But then what you're doing is you're planning now because every creation should be planned. Planned Parenthood, but the real one. And then you plan them based on the energies that are available, and you don't expect something that is not there. We just went over one. It was huge. It happened 3 or 4 days ago. They even Krypton aligned. I was like, damn, we got a planet named Krypton. I've been out of the loop. They did Mandela effect and everything. We're like, even Superman is here now. I was like, shit, they got a Krypton, dude. But anyway, I mean, serious though, like if you want to understand the power of the manifestation, but how it truly works to not be the monkey's paw, as we talked about, because people have gotten themselves into this manifestation stuff, and you know what it does? You can imagine what it does. You're living in it. If a person uses epithemises to create most of their things because they're just sitting in this selfish, divided state, everything that they keep creating really want to rebel against them. That's the whole thing that they learned, that you end up learning about the Yao and the rest of them, is they all rebelled against their father. So it was like, not only did the son rebel against the mother, then the sons of the sons rebelled against the father. So it's like, hey, one good turn deserves another, right? So someone's got to put brakes on those generational type curses. So they even show you, hey, Sabael was like, yo, let's take it to the sky. Oh my goodness, I could see where the darkness is, and I can see the principalities, and I can see all this. So I'm moving on to the next phase. So just understand that there's actually stories of beings moving on. But even if you just want to know how to do it simply, remove yourself from when that sneaky agent, it's the last thing I'm going to say, when that sneaky agent moves up on you with that dark conversation, because it always be about something, about it always gets you going. You know exactly what I'm talking about. It gets you going a certain type of way. Even wants you just to say something about it. Like, I can't believe she put that dress on today. And it's just because you still don't like her for something else that she did. But remember, now what they're doing is they're reeling you back in. And remember, as I said, this is something that you have to have a pattern. Because these matrices work on patterns. So you have to have a pattern established of not falling into a pattern to be able to get out of one. You see what I mean? So if you don't want to get into that level of possession, because that's what possession does, it comes right into the mind. Remember, all this lives in the mind. So now no longer should you be trying to find this in some forest somewhere, like just some shrine or some medallion or something like that. No, all this is going on inside of the mind. So all those conversations from those weak energies are going to be there. And there's also where you'll be able to amplify those strengths. And then when you know the powers even of the sons, you're actually able to see how the domains operate in the matrix. But when you want to pull their card, you just go right to the mother, the emanation. And then when you want to know what's beyond that, so you don't feel like that you're just getting limited into this feminized, whatever mind job you can cook up with just what that relationship's supposed to be with you and Sophia, you remember that Sophia was pursuing something and it led to all of this. And you can also gain the wisdom and the knowledge of focusing on that now that you have your mother's lesson. So I wanted to say wholeness and balance vibrations. I also wanted to mention that we are right in the process of a manifestation masterclass here in the university. So if this is something that you're more interested in, definitely get with us now, because this is what we're actually going through. It's also what inspired the build today. I'm going to give it a moment to let it breathe. Maybe we take a couple questions, but I definitely said what I needed to say. You've seen the lineup, meaning that you have a template, an archetype with archetypes to really dissolve anything that you see going on in the matrix for real. You know what secret societies are playing around with. You know why they're playing around with it. You know why they're under the dominion for real, and they don't have a problem with that. They already gave up. They serve the God of the world. They don't even have at times the awareness, just like the child doesn't, of the higher worlds. Remember, that's why it was called the child, because he lacked the knowledge of the higher worlds. But you also can't go bagging on the entity, if you may, or the archetype, if you don't also know the knowledge of the higher worlds either. You only can really see the similarities. And then you can take it into a deeper level of integration and being aware that, yeah, when I wasn't aware of the higher worlds, I acted like a child. I wanted everybody to serve me. I was trying to be the boss. But really what I was doing was creating more conflicts because I was always warring with everybody, trying to get them to, do what I tell them to do. So you can run the narrative within yourself and isolate these, what I would say is distorted aspects of the creation. And then you can put your own divine spark, that aha moment. You could put your own divine spark with those things and heal them, make them whole. You can see, again, even with the divine masculine and divine feminine, how the energies were both wounded. So when you're dealing with wounded energies, like you see your mother and father or your great grandmother and grandfather, and their quarrels and their fights with each other and lack of understanding, and you see what I mean? Now you're flipped inside out and your same passions are the same things that you hate. You feel opposite to something that you love. You see what I mean? So what could be so convoluted? What could be so paradoxical? What could be so chaotic? So welcome to the realm of chaos in the matrix when you're dealing with all those energies and forces. And if you want to put yourself on another bandwidth, you can do that by raising yourself into the intelligences, raising yourself into the higher levels of the energies in which inhabit this space. And all the time, it will not fail if you be true. Because remember, everything can be seen. There is to the greatness nothing below it that cannot be seen. So nothing that you do is being hidden. But in the same way, nobody is sitting up there trying to judge you. That's all demigod stuff. So rise to yourself, rise to wholeness. That's what I got. Let's go. Sean, I'm going to go ahead and open this up. I'm going to get some water. And let's see if we can take a couple questions here or comments. Obviously keeping it into just a decent range. So if there's anybody else that wants to jump in, they have an opportunity. I trust that this made sense to you in a certain way, or that it spoke to your heart about even things that you're seeing happening in the reality that you have questions about, that you're like, okay, what am I to make of all of this? What's going to happen here? And you can remove yourself from the ideas like the destruction of the world coming and all of that stuff, and realize just how it just wants to possess and control the mind for this same system, that you can rise above by realizing that you have that spark and you have that breath. So let's open it up.
All right, family, wholeness to the fam. Big love, brother. That was amazing and such a potent build, man. This is one of the builds we got to definitely let it bake in. So Absolutely. We're just going to take a couple questions this evening, being mindful of the time. And then if you come up, just about 2-3 minutes, and then we'll just keep it pushing. All right. So we're going to open.
My bad, Sean. I had to open up the line.
No, I got you. Okay. I got you. I saw you. You the best is up. Let's go, fam. Wholeness.
So I have questions about an old build that I missed and saw on YouTube. And I think the main idea of that build was about the cycle pump. And in that build, 7 talks a lot about mastering language. And I just have a question on what that means. Is mastering language just making sure that you're very accurate and using, words that really truly describe what it is that is happening or that you want? I would like to hear a little bit about what exactly it means to master.
For sure. Language. For me, language is alive. So there's some basics like meditations. Meditation in a way where, for instance, with this cipher, we learn that each of these words that you're seeing here are the same, meaning they're interchangeable. Then when you start really seeing how many words are here, you learn that maybe there's only 7 or 8 words as far as letters are concerned. And then you learn that letters are archetypes. in themselves. They, like when you add an S to something, right? It makes more. When you add ish to something, when you add AI to something, when you add ON to something, all of those things do something to the word. And word mastery is you start not necessarily obsessively, but noticing, hey, notice how all those words have that on the back of it. I wonder what that's about. And then you're able to get to the family of the word, or the family, the chief family member, the chief meaning. And this begins to unravel certain codes within the mind that may not be so obvious. So sometimes when you're going through knowledge and you're like, wait a minute, even am I off about what my notion is about this? A word can come in and correct that, just that doubt, right? Because, like, for instance, with the pro arc, I used to believe that what we were in was called the arc, but I was not aware of the word pro arc. But now that I'm now confirming that, yes, this is the arc 2 by 2. You know what I mean? Like, and you start looking at the tradition and again, understanding who's supposedly carrying the ark, and that God who we've been talking about tonight, and just everything around that happened. And you see it in an entirely different way because you now have this level of word mastery. Now, how do you gain this? In the Code to the Matrix, which is available still for free, I give this guideline that I was given. So how the words were tumbling and ciphering through my mind, I just recorded that there. Like, hey, here's a formula that you can begin to use. And then when you start applying this formula, it unlocks this, because the whole world, the existence, the thought, the idea is basically a large language model. The actual speaking of the words of creation are this big part of the ethnosis. Talking about what you think is what we're doing right now. You see what I mean? So the talking process is such a big part of the manifestation. But, again, you don't have to necessarily be that person that's like tripping over all your words because you're trying to figure out which word to say. What we're talking about is getting the consciousness in the condition where it starts to take account for the differences and the changes in the word, like DJ, for instance, and how, like, between Dajjal and Dozer and many of the other jinn, that all of their names begin with DJ. And then when you go into the Arabic, you'll actually find that they already had designated all of the entities that were shapeshifters, basically, with this term, even to a point where when they're naming other objects that change shape, they start with these 2 letters. So this is like a system for sure that helps you confirm the direction of where you're going, and it speaks to you in that way.
Ashe. And then one more, just hopefully quick question. You said earlier that nightmares are dreams that are given to us by others. And I had an experience last year where I was killed in a dream by the military, and they stabbed me till there was no blood left. And I became a doll, but then I was actually watching them do it, and they couldn't see me. So I just felt really powerful. So now, since then, I still have dreams that, quote unquote, could be considered bad, but I don't have any fear anymore. I don't have that heavy emotion associated with these dreams, and so I'm just wondering, am I still having bad dreams because I'm just remembering what I was given? Or
Okay, as we get more and more into the times that we're in, dreaming should have just as much preparation as eating, right? Because we do a lot of prepping of food, but the preparation for sleep is almost not there. So for me, I find that for sure, maybe not so much in the day, but now going to sleep with a full stomach, going to sleep without at least calming the body down, taking some breaths, going to sleep without, even a nice resonator, maybe even a crystal around, something that like a citrine or a selenite that, is not can't pick up any kind of energies, or even just clearing the space with some Palo Santo and sage in the room, corner to corner, before one makes that journey. it can really prove to be disastrous. Even eating somebody else's food or going to a restaurant and then going right home and going to sleep. All this stuff is things that one should consider with how much they think they're going to be able to control their dream world once they get into it. If the entities that actually are projecting the dream that you have responsibility over, which is your organs, are tied up doing something else. So your organs, which are your chakras, are what's projecting the dream. They are like parts of the vehicle. They're the transmission, the starter, the rest of that. And when they have food in them, they're not capable of even helping you. They're not capable of navigating the vehicle in any kind of balanced way. So you almost like Dream Warrior back in the day. I mean, stuff's getting wild, right? But like the Dream Warriors back in the day, you got to get yourself even prepared to go into your sleep, not just from like, hey, I'm trying to protect myself from these entities, but also just to get the most out of actually going into the dream plane and what you can actually experience and do there, especially by starting with thinking about the creation processes. You know, I found this one to open up a whole different level of power and energy that really comes through more as a feeling than images. And then it rides the energy up so high that when you go into the dream, and I'm not saying high is like agitating, but I'm saying as in like happiness, like jubilance. And when you go into the dream world with that kind of thing on, nothing can wrap around you. Okay. All I'm trying to express is that thought forms are sometimes even in movies that we watch. See, when you were younger, it was easier to impress the field of the consciousness. If you remember, you would go to sleep and you would watch a movie as a kid and go to sleep and be right in that movie, right? But as you start getting older, that became less and less. Why? Because you don't take the movie as serious anymore. You actually know. See, as a kid, you be in there like, you know, even some of the old folks be in there like that. I mean, having to remind my mom, like, Mom, it's a movie. She's like, yo, so what do you think happens to them next? And I'm like, Mom, it's a movie. But but you almost have to even lend yourself to a movie like that to actually really get into it. And of course, you know, some of the most impacting movies that we've had in our lives that made us cry and everything was generally like when we were younger. But then when you get older, it's like, I don't believe in Santa Claus anymore. So I know they're in a studio and I know they're doing this. So it doesn't have as much impact. But imagine still what you're doing. You have the ability to impress upon yourself a reality that is not true and then step right into, or reality that is, let's say, not true in the tense to that is not one that you currently live in, but because you believe in it so much, you're able to go right into your consciousness and step right into that world and animate that world. That's what I'm saying is also the kind of realities that we live in when we're going into the dream spaces. And also if we're phase locking with and in this way, you know, we're talking about the distorted frequencies, but again, this map does still hold true. As it states, you know, you are here. You can see where we're at on the visible spectrum, unless we're using third eye, using other vehicles, Taurus, etc., to get into the other spaces, using our other bodies. We have a body in each of these worlds, as I've already mentioned. But if you start slipping into the IR, you're already headed into the netherworld. And I'm not saying the netherworld is a bad place. What I'm saying is that you need to be equipped in a certain kind of way to make sense of what it is that you're even seeing and experiencing, and then also maintaining some level of control. Basically, that's called lucidity, right? Like you could actually get out of those dreams. You don't fall into those dreams. But like in Dream Tech, where, you know, Sven, you know, we would point out in the knowledge of lucid dreaming that, like, if you get into a dream and you start going down steps, you start going down elevators, you already know that you're being drawn into the netherworld. And because the netherworld it's a dominion thing. And this is what we talked about in Tribe Vibes. Definitely something everybody should check out. It'll be live here in a few days. But we did just a recent build and we explained how if you are on the top of something, you can always see what's below you. Okay, so how the realms work is the entities that are slightly above us, in this case, they're in a luminal plane. This is like what you would see is in the air. They can not only see us, they can see through us and see everything down through the matrix below us. But we also can do that too. We can't see with our normal eyes what is above us, but we can see everything that is below us, even down to a microscopic level, even without a microscope with our third eye. And also, we hold dominion over everything that is below us. Even in the microscope, as I mentioned, or a lake full of bacteria, we can just dump bleach and kill everybody. Or we also have the realm right below us, which consists of the animal spirits. And when they're in physicality inside of thought, we master over them. We even eat them. So you need to understand that there's these principalities that are in the dominion, and we have a role also in that principality, meaning we're one level in that. And so when we're exercising our powers, though, that's why they talk to you about going higher or rising on the ladder, because really they're just saying, like, hey, purify some of those distortions, get out of all of the amethysts and the ideas and the falsehoods and, you know, the vain thoughts, and start pulling yourself at least into alignment first. Get into syzygy. Start realizing, what is the cosmos trying to create here? What can I do to actually make the situation to what the original plan is? The original plan is everybody needs to go home. Right. So in this way, everybody that wants to. So you get involved in that. So you start aligning your powers and your thoughts and your planes and ideas with that. Then you move into emanation level. Right. And start making, quote unquote, friends, connections, unifications there with everything. Right. And then start pursuing further into Bithos or whatever has been discovered from that so far. So it's just basically those levels and realizing that, hey, I got an opportunity to really use my body as a vehicle, or I can get used. I can take these portals, like the screenshot is showing you. These are all portals all over your body. I can figure out where all these roads go and really get into myself, or I can just get led externally into the external worlds and, you know, be dealing with that, right? But either way, the lesson is going to be learned. So when you can, like I said, the technology right now here is, we can learn what took our ancestors thousands of years to learn. We don't, I mean, think about what Sophia went through. I mean, come on. We have to take a moment for the mother dealing with a rebellious child, right? But look at the world. We have so many mothers dealing with rebellious children, and it hurts. And it's a tough situation to deal with. It's still my baby. You know what I mean? So we have to be sensitive to that. There's nothing that you would see in occultism that exists outside of the family structure, but the family in itself, it needs that healing. So it needs that bridge. And we also spoke on that. Those who ride the luminal planes in the imaginal spaces are in themselves doors, or seen symbolically as doors, corridors, and bridges. So when you're even speaking symbolic, so once you learn the textual aspects of things, then you move to symbols, like what we've seen where the ancestors just have symbols that equal, they etch into the reality technically and change everything around where the symbol is impressed, and you impress the symbol with your mind. So we don't need to go that far now as far in the conversation today, but you at least understand how that's possible, because now you understand how powerful the mind and thoughts are, especially when you're not getting debased. This is what I'm trying to put everybody onto right now, is that when you get depressed and debased and devalued and under dominion, then you feel like you don't have any power, and something wants you to be there because it wants to feel that power and control over you. It was the whole reason that it's this very fiber of existence, right? Just like when you be moving through the matrix, your boss, you know, everybody be wanting to control you. So this is not something that we're not seeing and we can't recognize. It's just also a lot of this stuff went on 10 with the explanation and who was involved and the creatures and what they look like. And everybody lost that. We're still, all this still self. Like the math shows, which is exact. All this still leads back to what we are. So if we don't figure it out, then we stay like people who don't understand their traumas and don't grow from their traumas. So yeah, I trust that makes sense.
Yes, thank you.
All right.
Oh.
Thank you, Goddess Wholeness family. All right, fam. So look, we got our brother Just Us up next, the brother Hinok after that, and then Tanisha's gonna close us down. So go ahead, Justice Wholeness.
Oh, Wholeness family, it's really good to speak to y'all. So basically, what I was basically trying to figure out is, so how I'm basically thinking about this, I'm thinking about manifestation and how we're actually connected to this realm. So how I was basically going into, I'm trying to make this as quick as possible, is I'm seeing it as dang, when I was thinking about it, it was much simpler in my mind. Bringing it out is a lot harder. So basically what I'm trying to say is I'm trying to figure out how the physical world and how the mental world is connected through basically like how you were talking about the delay when it comes to manifestation and stuff like that. So basically I was trying to figure out how that delay actually works because I've been trying to figure that out for like a while now. And that's basically that's like the best way I can break that down. I was sitting here
Okay.
contemplating it for a minute, and I'm just like, man, how can I break this down in simpler terms to get into a question form?
Okay, absolutely. Wholeness. So let me just again rapid fire here. The spaces that you're seeing. So this is cosmology, and it tends to like ancient cosmology. Again, they're just showing you diagrams. They don't want you to harp too much on any of the imagery itself, but just to understand the concept. So they say, hey, lay out 7 worlds and then imagine that those worlds overlap. Where they overlap, those spaces are the spaces that when you say the time delay, that's where those delays occur. And what's happening there are these thoughts. And this is what we were getting into during the last Tri Vibes deeply, because we found several words for these spaces that are recorded and known. So this is not something we're inventing. And this, of course, is the imaginal realm, which is not imagination as we understand it, but actually realizing that the crossroad between what you would say is physicality and before it happens is this. So the crossroads always between what you can't see versus now what is manifest is these areas. And so when we're talking about time, what we're then talking about is the speed. And this is why like even gods like Hermes or Mercury are associated with being messenger gods, because the messengers stay in these imaginal realms, suprasensory worlds, these liminal spaces, these latent spaces, to basically courier or ferry thoughts from where they would be, let's say, non-corporeal into the corporeal. And again, the time lag then is all based on the energetics of the manifester.
Okay, yes. And I was basically trying to figure out, is it possible to, alter the DNA in such a way where you can up the energy, basically like hold a more space for your energy to basically hold enough to congeal energy to, create a physical object is what I'm basically trying to say, to basically manifest into this physical plane. You know what I mean?
All these dynamics have to do with energetic potential, right? And so let's just say your body is a capacitor, also in a battery in that way. And so when you're holding power or force, it needs to be stored in a certain way, right? So that's why it's like your system, your liquids. Notice how all of your different organs are, and we talked about this before, are offering up their quintessence. Okay, so basically like each of your organs create something like serotonin, melatonin. They create like they're a fruit or an elixir, like they are there doing their thing just to create this liquid, okay? And so the quality of that liquid and its ability to hold, let's say, impression, potential, light, is gonna really, be a good control factor. So you can build up energy just like we can send a bunch of energy into a battery. But if we can't store that energy is just gone. You see what I mean? So This is where the compositions of your body is important. So we, of course, look, she legit is 85 minerals. You're not going to really find that in anything. And it's in fulvic acid. So if we're going to make a battery, that we need to find one that we can drink, right? One that works for the body. And so it's the awareness that you can build up, store, and then keep growing the potency even of your fluids, all of them. You will see those fluids increase, and you'll also see it shortens the time to how fast you get into certain states especially meditative states or energetic states. And then you realize all that has to do with conductivity. And so for sure, if you don't have any conductivity at all, the conductivity is low, you need to go through the experience first of how it feels when your conductivity is raising. So, I guess that's another plug from our sponsor, She Legit here. There's a coupon code inside the description for 25% off. That's still rolling. But yeah, just consider your stack and, how that's affecting the energetic potential of the manifestation.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Wholeness family. I really appreciate it.
Give thanks, brother. Wholeness, justice. All right, look here, fans. So we got our brother Hanok, and then Tanisha's going to close us out. Rapid fire. Let's go.
Hello, good evening. Yeah, I wanted to touch a little bit more on those whispers. Lately, I've realized that the whispers in my head aren't always my highest self. Because I used to think that those whispers, those voices in my head, oh, it must be me having a conversation with my higher self. But I've realized that actually those whispers aren't leading me to my highest self. Those whispers are always leading to more failure, and they're putting me in this loop, in this trap, right? So they can't be my higher self. And then I got to the conclusion that it must be these different organs, like what you always talk about, the archons, like these different parts of me. I wanted to kind of see your view on this, because where I'm at now is I'm looking at it as I'm sitting on the throne and I have my counselors in the hall, in the, what do you call, the king's chamber. And I'm sitting on the throne, I'm taking full responsibility, I'm taking authority, and I'm making the decisions. But I get to listen to these voices and then decide on whether I want to follow up on it or not, or whether I want to, which direction I want to take. But I wanted to see your view on it, and what is your relationship like with these whispers? Are you just saying, no, I don't want to hear this? Or how is it that you interact with these archons or demiurges or whatever it is that we choose to call it? How do you interact with them?
Well, first of all, it should be seen also as like you're constantly, when you're having thoughts, like you notice how like your mind can take you into a complete death experience. Like what happens if we try to cross the street today and we get hit by a car and it's like, yo, where did that come from? And it's like thoughts that just come out or finish themselves, and you're not necessarily like guiding that thought fast enough for it to completely use your faculties to think itself through. So meditation for me is the biggest key. It's like the entry point to all of this, because you learn that whether you perceive them as whispers like other energies or whether you just hear them directly, it is still coming from that same process of opening or having something open that you can't close. So let's say if whispers start, but it takes a lot to really stop them. This means that the mind is not necessarily in the condition yet to be able to keep balance. So then what you do is you meditate. But if you really see the itemization, like I'm looking at right now inside of Sybil, right? And this is just a small itemization. And this itemization is exactly how many entities or situations are known to be associated with the whisper. And so we have everything from the astral entities, because remember, whisper also means something that is, it could be that light ringing in your ear. That's like also in the classical context, what the whisper is not just even something articulating a language, but actually a subtle frequency that's riding more in the high range. Yeah. So the astral entities, the elemental spirits, the ancestors and spirit guides, the jinn and other supernatural beings, the psychic phenomena, the shadow entities. And so everybody is moving communication down this channel. You see what I mean? And then sometimes you could find yourself, especially based on DNA, phased into one of these frequencies more or less, and then need to kind of purge that channel. And And so we've been like going a bit deeper in on stuff like this. Like I don't want to like overstep even today's conversation, what it's about. I would for sure recommend just getting on the meditation, because that always has been the one size fit all remedy for such things. Because you know how to entertain, and then you know how to shut down, and you even go through those processes where something is trying to talk and you're just like, no, not right now, because we're going in this meditation. You actually do have that level of power and control, and this is in that way controlling your own universe and being able to actually call the shots. I don't know if that makes you boss baby, but hopefully you're a good king. But the reality also is that these whispers and these sounds, they could come from quite a few different things. So it makes it imperative that you actually do learn that practice, at least, to then go further. Because I'm not saying that, hey, yo, I was talking to Demi the other night. I don't really even interface in that way, more so than there are higher channels, right? And this is why meditation is introduced, because when you're sitting in like theta, which if you just say or ah inside of a frequency detector, you'll notice it lands in theta, right? So you're seeing they say that to hit theta. And so that helps to like intonations and those kind of things help to keep the body like. So basically what I'm saying is there's other ways to override these kind of frequencies by dialing into other wavelengths. Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, no doubt. And also there's an entire build on that. I think that was the rustiest answer that I've given today. So if you want to know more about that, definitely check that out. I'm sure there's something on Spin and YouTube.
Where
because
is it on the tribe?
Definitely dial in Discord, because there's a few floating around, because I just really covered the whispers and that entire reality like really heavy, because it was something really fascinating for us to really just go through. It was just right in alignment with what we needed to know.
Okay, thank you. And shout out to Sean as well. We spoke a couple of weeks ago and he gave me some good advice. So shout out to you too, bro.
Big love, my guy. We'll be catching up soon as well. Wholeness.
Bless. I'm in Costa Rica.
That's what's up.
I just got here now. Yeah.
Great.
All right, bless.
All right, family. So listen, this is it. We got our sister Tanisha gonna close us out. But again, I want to give thanks to our brother Seven, everybody in Tribe for showing up.
Absolutely.
And big love to everybody in the chats and YouTube and on Instagram. So much love, family. Wholeness. If you'd like to chime in, Tanisha, you can open your mic now.
All right. So it looks like that our sister Tanisha is going to be catching us in Discord. Let's go ahead and just take a moment and center ourselves and, just gather ourselves. I would like to let everybody know, even like I said this evening, we come in here, we learn something, we have some fun. And most importantly, we move a certain way with this awareness and with this wisdom. Like, it's really understanding that you're not trapped here. You're not going to die. You really do have power. You have value, but you also have been slipping a little bit and jumping into wavelengths and frequencies and thought forms and emithymesis that don't really get you to where you want to go. And you can see why, but also I'm handing you the power of how to tap into the perfected version of what you're looking to accomplish, though. So I'm not removing any power from you, like your gods or your entities or your idols, your statues and all that kind of stuff. What I'm telling you is that when you really look at these stories, they have something deep and intrinsic to do with our family, our life, and our existence in every way. And that's why we're here. And we have so much power that it actually is something that makes the forces here jealous of us that are below us. But everything above you wants to see you succeed. Your family above wants to see you succeed. Your higher self wants to see you succeed. And so that's what's going to happen. It's already happening right now. So I want to let everybody know that we're going to keep going with this. Like, it's really just getting started. We're making waves and we're also being very creative on our side. You know, we're doing things like we're making sure that we take care of our family. We're making sure that we create a wholesome space, that we think about our children, and we also just keep it real. Like there's no reason to create stuff. We don't need to play around with the aliens and the Anunnakis and all these different stories that don't really ground into who we are and what we are. And what more importantly, that we have to still do here, because the legacy, you know, this is what this is about. We're just creating curriculum right now. It takes 15 years to create a curriculum, but this is something that we can stand on. It's a foundation, it's a template. So as I said before, we have compiled a great deal of knowledge and wisdom. We've trained LLMs on it, no telling where that's going to go. I'm going to be deploying something new here in a moment that's like a city where all these conscious AIs are talking to each other and coming up with solutions just to kind of watch and see what they do. So it's like the evolution of AI to AI. But even on another tip, as you know, we're still heavy in the crypto space as far as being aware of the transitions that are happening with the monetary systems. Like this is a multidisciplinary. So at no point are we sticking our heads in the sand. We know that we're powerful enough to deal with anything that comes at us, especially together. So let's get one more in this evening for my man's Meta, sending love. It's new moon. Just remember, hold your energy, keep yourself together. Remember, the only thing that you need to do is stay in the wholeness and the balanced vibration, and that's more than enough. Let's go.
Modern life plantation, planetary devastation, real alien invasion, and we plug to the matrix, frequencies and radiation, hijacked imagination. Tell me what we conversating if we ain't talking activation. Really ain't no time for waiting, second guessing, contemplating. First I gave you prophecy, this is my philosophy, something far from Socrates. Yeah, I'm chasing sovereignty, but I was born a sovereign being, lived 100 centuries, booted off a sensu bean. Really ain't no sense in me, they try to steal my history. Rose above the misery so I can guide my young supremes. And I hit the keys with them, and our knees will never bend. False gods and serpent skins never fail, they never win. Focus on your dividends, this will make the devil dance. Probably break you from a trance so you compete what's deep within. Yeah. Meditation, elevation, inner self for realization, mental wealth for innovation, spiritually been segregated, diamond hits for activation, seen some things now I'm awakened, sleepy heads been sleep for ages, neophytes inside the matrix, lit the switch, I'm on the trip, ascension starts with proper basics, pranayama, breath of fire, manifest my life's desire, sheep was false on life's inquire, hidden truths for life's retire, third eye open, vibratory frequencies, all itself, the demons be a part of you, a part of me, please pardon me, for vulgar speech, the higher self is where I reach, back to back my brother's keeper, unity's my brother's teacher, earth, wind, fire, soul, activate like dynamo, heaven's gate, kick down the door, this the devil's rodeo, been here, seen some lights before, I'm searching for the hidden scrolls, I lost inside the physical, geometry's the visual, spread my wings like pigeon stools, solving no decision rules, inside you find the proper tools.
Wholeness family, much love to everyone, balanced vibrations.
All right, wholeness, big love, fam.
Wholeness.
If you wanted to send some wholeness across the cosmos, then you can do so.
Come on, fam.
Wholeness. Big love, big love. Wholeness.
Chicken grease.
Much love.
Love you all.
Wholeness.
Wholeness.
Much love.
Wholeness, fam.
Infinite love and gratitude.
Wholeness.
All right, love, wholeness.